So now this is the interactive part where we're going to play with the tools. We're going to go over the tools one by one. I'm going to have you guys play with it a little bit so you can see what it does and how it changes the picture. And if you guys have any questions or anything like that, just interrupt while we're doing this, okay? So let's start with the arrow tool here. This is called the Selector tool. This is the very first item up at the top. If you select it, you'll see that your pointer really doesn't change. That's normal. And the idea is that you can use it to pick any of these items on the screen. Now the only way that you can pick items is if that layer is unlocked. So if you find that you're clicking in the screen and nothing is getting selected, I encourage you to go over here to the Layers and Objects area and check to see if there is a lock on the side. And if there is, click it so that it's open. If you do that, you should be able to click on these items. Clicking on these items gives you some handles. These handles let you do exactly what you think that they do. This lets you scale. This lets you stretch. You can move things around. Okay? And you can use your arrows to move things. So if you press the arrows, it'll bump it over 1 pixel at a time while it's selected. So I don't know if you can see that I'm moving it, but I am with my arrow. If you hold down Shift and you press the arrow, it'll move it 10 pixels at a time.
So this will spin at the same rate as this then?
I'm not sure if it's the key ratio. I need to check.
Well,
the nice thing about this is that
this is on.
Yeah.
It's very easy to manipulate and move things around if you have to make a nudge on something. So for example, this A is not quite in the right place. I can double click on that object and I can nudge it over and achieve the effect it is that I was trying to achieve, and it stays in that position. I can do that with any of these objects. So what I would like for you to do is go around practicing selecting individual objects and moving them slightly, and just get comfortable moving it with the arrows, get comfortable moving it around with the mouse. See if you can take it away from where the shadow is and put it back in place without missing. And when you're done with that, up in the edit area, there's an undo. You can undo as many times as you need to get it back to where it was. Okay? So don't feel like you're messing up. You can't mess this up. Now, I mentioned that there's a bunch of tools up at the top, right? These tools affect how the Selector tool works. I'll quickly go through what we're looking at here with these tools. You can see that there's some selector boxes. Each of these things indicates what they do, I think, if you hover over them. It looks like it only popped up for a second on my screen. Select all objects is the first icon. So you can see there's a box around a square and a circle. So if you have a layer or something selected, let's say that I only have the white shadows of 3932, which is this down here. You can see if I move it around. Oops. If I go to the white shadow here and select this, and you can see that I'm moving. Hang on a second. This is locked. I remember this from last time. Let me unlock these things so that we can move them. Okay. Now, if we have the white shadow here, like I was saying before, I have it selected. You can see that I can move it around with my mouse or my keyboard, right? And if I were to deselect that, but have this layer selected here, I could pick select all objects and it would pick everything inside of that layer. If I happen to be on the Dirty Mechanics layer and I click select all objects, you can see it picks everything there, all right? Here is select all layers, if I remember right. Select all in all layers. So this is a good way to pick everything up if you need to. This one here will make it so that you only select on a particular layer, if I remember correctly. Toggle selection box to select all touched objects. So I believe touched means like if you manipulate something for a little bit. I would encourage you to play around with these things. They all have their own place and special uses. You can see rotation, you can see reflection, you can see justification. Just like alignment is what I mean when I said justification. That's what these arrow things mean. So you can make it go all the way to the top or go in the middle. This will let you change the location using exact numbers. So if you know that you want it to be exactly at 750 on the page, you can type 750 there and press enter. And you can see everything moved over to start at 750 on the page, on the x-axis. Likewise with the y, you can change the width and the height. You can lock the constraints between the width and the height by using this block, meaning that you can't make it wider than it is tall. It will keep the same height and width ratio if you have this selected here. You can change the units that you're manipulating things in. So if you want to see things in inches, you can have that. And then, I don't know what these do. Okay, yeah, so these buttons here adjust individual properties of it while you're doing things like stretching it, scaling it, rotating it, doing things like that. Like I said, go and look through these things, see what they do, play around with them. That's the selection tool. Any questions? Cool. Selection tool is the easiest one. It only gets harder from here. I'm just kidding. Next tool is the node tool. So if you click on that, that's the little arrow that has a little curve on the side of it with a dot. So the node tool is really the bread and butter of this program. And when you use the node tool and click on any of the objects, you'll see something interesting happen. You'll see a bunch of these diamonds pop up. What these diamonds represent are individual points in our mathematical equation that is in our file. And the whole point of these little dots are so that we don't have to think about the math. If we have these dots, we can simply move the dot where we want it to be, and it changes the mathematical program underneath it without us having to think about it. So what I want you guys to do is take the node tool and select one of these objects and start moving them around and observing what happens when you start moving these dots into new places. You'll see that if you change the object that you have selected, that different parts of the image can be changed as well. So go ahead and do that for just a second. When you click off of it, you can see that your object stays intact the way that you moved it around. Does anyone have any idea why we have different dots all over this particular part of the image? Does anyone have any guesses?
They are what make up the shape itself.
That's basically correct. When you have a very complex object and you need to describe that with a mathematical formula, let's do something simple, like say for example, a square. How would you describe the mathematical formula for a square if you're, like, say you have an x and you have a y? How would you describe this square? What would you give me? If you were to only tell me that it's a square, math, just only math, numbers and formulas.
Length times height.
Okay, but what would that be in numbers? Like, give me an example.
Like 2 by 2 or 4 by 4.
Okay, and 2 by 2 and 4 by 4 kind of gives you the size, but it doesn't give you the position, so you need to include position too, right? Hmm?
0, 2, 2 and 2.
Okay, so you're describing the points on the square, right?
Length. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that is not unlike what we have in this picture here, right? These individual points, right? Now, these points can exist. You can tell me what coordinates the points are, and that's fine, but that doesn't really say anything about the lines between them, right? So then what do you do to describe the lines? Good answer. The dots actually have a place inside of a bigger equation. And generally what it will do is it will say, here are the points, but these points are part of a rectangle. And when the SVG file gets written, it would do something like rectangle, and then it would let you put in the coordinates. Okay, it would be x1, and then y1, and then x2, and then y2, all the way up until you get x4 and y4, right? And this can help figure out what these lines are supposed to be because it knows that it's drawing a rectangle and those are the 4 corners. That's a very simplified version of what's actually happening, but you should know that these dots exist, which they do, and the lines between them exist, which, as you can see, when we pull this line across, there's a line that's still stretched, that's going to the other dots, right? So these lines definitely exist. So when we're manipulating these images in a vector program, we are literally manipulating the mathematics inside of the file. And just to give you a little bit more of a view on that, I'm just going to zoom in on this SVG file and scroll through it very slowly so you can see what is inside of that file. It is literally, here is a group. Here is what the group has assigned as a fill color. Here is what the style of the image of the line is. Here's the transformation that that particular group of items has applied to it. Here is a path inside of that group. That path has these dimensions on it. And each of these lines looks an awful lot like X and Y coordinates, right? And there are some letters mixed in, but the main thing that you have to realize is that this is just format and data to a program that Inkscape knows how to read and turn into this, all right? So every time you edit one of these things, all you're doing is changing math and allowing the program to have infinite pixels to be printed anywhere that it needs to be printed. Okay, so the node tool, as you can see, lets you do all sorts of stuff with these diamond dots. But if you click on one of these diamond dots, you'll see some circle dots show up next to it. Has anyone played around with the circle dots yet?
I have.
All right, can you give me what your intuition is on what they are doing?
They are actually affecting the curvature of the shape.
Okay, that's a good start. Why are there 2 circles?
Because they're 2 different angles.
Keep
Right?
going.
So like if you control one, it's gonna change like only that side.
Mhm.
While if you like change both, it's gonna affect both sides at once.
Mm-hmm. So you need to have a way of describing the way that the line goes away from this dot in each direction, because a line has 2 directions from a point, right? There are 2 rays, going back to geometry or whatever that is. There are 2 rays that come from a point. A ray is infinite, but in this case, it's really just a ray that goes to the next point in the path line. So what we're doing here is we're describing basically the slope as it leaves the point. And that gets merged into the slope of the point that it gets received by. Because you can see that if I touch this dot, it shows not just the blue circles that are attached to this, but it shows the blue circles to the points that it is attached to also. You notice that? And that's because that this circle affects that part of the line, and this circle affects the other part of the line. And together, they create the shape of the line that goes between those 2 points. They both matter. And in some cases, you can have absolutely no modification to that dot, like it would be effectively these circles being in the center where they were originally. I'm literally deleting these circles by putting them into the square. That is how you get rid of them. And now this is just a regular point, and it's a sharp point at that. If I were to deselect and zoom in, you can see it's literally a point. Now, the technical term for these dots are handles, all right? You can call them dots, people will understand what you're saying, but they're handles because you grab them and you can move them around. And they affect the line that they're attached to. Looking very quickly across the top, you'll see a lot of new options. So if you switch back and forth between the selection tool and the node tool, you'll see everything up there changes, right? So these options are specific to the node tool. And if you hover over them, you'll see exactly what they all do. This one with the plus adds nodes. This one with a minus removes nodes. This one joins, two nodes together. This one breaks nodes. This one takes nodes and makes a new path. This calls it a segment. But you'll see there's a lot of names here that say path, so we're going to use path for a name. This one puts combines a segment into two other segments. And then these are ways that you can reveal and hide those rounded corners. So if you click on a point and you click on these, they will let you get back to the various types of handles that we've been playing with. So if you delete these circles, for example, and you want to get them back, you click on these icons up here and it'll pop them out for you, right? Easy peasy. The other thing that you'll notice is that there's a diamond and there's a square. And if we hover over them, you see it says, make selected nodes corner, make selected nodes smooth. Let's do this. I'm going to get rid of these. And I'm going to click on the point, and I'm going to zoom in. Okay? So when we're zoomed in, it's a what? It's a, huh?
I don't know. It's a point in space?
It's a point.
It's a point.
You got it. And now if I were to click this and go to here where it says make selected nodes smooth, what happens?
It rounds it out.
It sure does. Now, if we were to be doing this on a part of the path that was already flat, let's find a straight line. That's not one. We'll make one. Okay? So one of these things up here is add a node. So I'm going to click the plus sign and I'm going to put a node right there. What I did was I clicked on this to make sure that this was active, and I double clicked along the path. So you can go and find any path and it will create a new point wherever you click. Okay? If I want to create a new point over here, I can double click and it'll make a point there for me. Okay? So now, I have this new point here. You can see it's in a straight line. I'm going to go to the corner. The corner doesn't really change at all, right? Even if I remove these handles, it looks exactly the same way as it did before. And if I go to smooth it out, it still looks exactly the same. So the smoothing really depends on what the edges are, or what the points are on either side of the point that you're working with, right? So the idea of smoothing versus corners makes sense, right? You have, let's see, straighten lines. So if you have a bunch of points that need to be in a straight line, you could select them. I'm holding down Shift, and if you hold down Shift while you click on points, they get added to your selection. So you can see this bounding box keeps getting bigger and bigger. Oops. By holding down Shift and clicking on them. And if you click again with the Shift button, it will remove it. So you can increase the number of selections or remove the number of selections by holding Shift and clicking. And when I do this, and I click straighten, it removed a bunch of the handles and made it as direct to the other points as possible. This is curve handles, so if you want to give it more of a curve, like this here, you can see it is pointed here. This will give you handles so you can curve it out. And there's some other advanced stuff which we're really not going to get into. This is a little more advanced than I really want to get to. But that's like the main bread and butter of playing with these, because all of your vector files are made up of paths and points. And if you know how to manipulate the paths and the points, you can literally make anything in this program. Okay? All it is manipulating these math formulas using these tools.